Before we discuss Boko Haram kidnapping hundreds of boys in order to, as the group has declared, promote Islam, I already know that many of our Muslim friends are going to insist in the comments section that these mass kidnappings have nothing to do with Islam. Instead of responding to such comments, I'd like to ask our Muslim friends a simple question. A French satirical newspaper posts some cartoons of your prophet. A terrorist group kidnaps hundreds of schoolboys. Which of these two scenarios is more likely to upset and enrage your community? We already know the answer. A French satirical newspaper posting cartoons of your prophet results in terrorist attacks and worldwide protests. Hundreds of schoolboys being kidnapped in the name of Allah results in some half-hearted tweets of disapproval. Now tell me, do your priorities have anything to do with your religion? The Wall Street Journal reports, 6 years after the abduction of 276 schoolgirls ignited the global Bring Back Our Girls campaign, Nigeria is again reeling from a mass kidnapping, this time of more than 300 boys. I can personally guarantee you that those boys are already being brainwashed into becoming the next generation of suicide bombers and Boko Haram jihadis. Jihadist group Boko Haram said on Tuesday it had seized students from an all-boys boarding school in Katsina, northwest Nigeria, to punish them for un-Islamic practices. Local officials said that 333 of the school's 800 students were missing and assumed captive, a number that analysts say could mark one of the largest mass kidnappings of school children in history. Nigerian surveillance aircraft and American drones have been dispatched over the sprawling forest where survivors say the captors forced them to march. One of the students who escaped the captors, 17-year-old Usama Male, said the abduction began just after 10 p.m. on Friday. Dozens of men in military fatigues shooting Kalashnikovs into the air poured into the sand-caked school campus and ordered the entire student body to march into the forest. After almost 2 days of walking in a hundreds-strong column with no food and little water, he was one of the lucky few who escaped. They said they would kill whoever tried to flee, but I positioned myself near the back and waited for a chance to run, he said, sitting alongside his father, Aminu, in the town of Kankara. Hundreds of my fellow pupils are still in captivity somewhere in the forest. Smart kid, came up with a plan, got away, made it back to safety, reported everything he could remember. Only in Nigeria have we seen militants walk into a high school and abduct the whole student body, said Bulama Bukarti, an analyst at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change based in London. The security situation across the north is rapidly deteriorating. An attack on Nigeria's children is an attack on the country's future. And Boko Haram knows that. Many of the details around the kidnapping in a remote agricultural area with poor communication remain murky, including the true tally of the missing. School authorities said at least 446 students were now with their parents, but that they have been unable to reach scores of families to confirm the boys' safety because of the poor phone network. Boko Haram's claim of responsibility has surprised some analysts, marking a departure from the extremist group's usual area of operation in the country's northeast. What happened in Katsina was done to promote Islam, said Abu Bakr Shekau, the group's leader and Africa's most wanted terrorist with a $7 million U.S. bounty on his head. Western education is not the type of education permitted by Allah and His holy prophet. At this point, you wonder why jihadis even bother saying, we're doing this for our religion, we're doing this in the name of Allah. No matter how many times they say it, Western politicians and journalists never believe them. If you ask CNN why Boko Haram just kidnapped more than 300 schoolboys, CNN will probably say, it's because of climate change. Shekau didn't give any figures for the number of boys kidnapped in Kankara, but the mass abduction appears to be even larger than Boko Haram's 2014 kidnapping of 276 schoolgirls from the town of Chibok, which gave rise to the global Bring Back Our Girls campaign and sparked a U.S. military intervention. A new hashtag, Bring Back Our Boys, began to trend in Nigeria as fresh details trickled out. The United Nations has strongly condemned the abductions and called for the children's immediate and unconditional release. Jihadis come at the world with suicide bombings and kidnappings. The world responds with hashtags and meaningless condemnations. Boarding schools across several northern states have been closed, and the governor of Katsina appeared on television in tears. The local government has said that the kidnappers have been in contact to discuss a ransom to release the boys, although Shekau said there were no negotiations. Did you catch that? What is Boko Haram's stated goal? Stopping un-Islamic education. What happens when they kidnap hundreds of boys? Boarding schools across several northern states have been closed. Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to understand Boko Haram. For years, many of our Muslim friends have been bragging about Islam being the world's fastest growing religion. They've been bragging that in just a few decades, Islam will be the world's largest religion. To them, this signaled Allah's approval and their ultimate victory. Then came the avalanche of apostasy. Muslims have been leaving Islam like it's a sport. Those who remain in Islam are trying to understand why things aren't going the way they thought they would go. They're trying to figure out a way to stop the avalanche, and Muslims in different parts of the world are coming up with different ways of dealing with the problem. Boko Haram decided that the greatest threat to Islam is non-Islamic education. So they're trying to save Islam by stopping Western education at any cost. If they have to kidnap hundreds of girls, rape them, and brainwash some of them into becoming suicide bombers, that's what they'll do. If they have to kidnap hundreds of boys in order to convince the government to shut down schools, that's what they'll do. Jihadis are in a state of panic and desperation. On the one hand, we can be glad that they're in a state of panic and desperation because we know what's causing the panic and desperation. On the other hand, jihadis in a state of panic and desperation, lashing out at the world in an effort to rescue their religion, are going to do a lot of damage to a lot of people. A wounded hyena is more aggressive than a healthy hyena.